The hallway's quiet hum pressed against the door as I sat alone in my wedding dress, wondering why my new husband had vanished from our wedding night. Still, I stayed frozen, tightening my grip on the bouquet until the petals bent like my expectations. As the hum faded, a woman's low laugh drifted through the wall, far too intimate for any man who just vowed himself to me. While the bed next door creaked again, my breathing leveled into something colder than disbelief. The same muffled voices made it clear my marriage began with someone else in his arms. That's when I decided I wouldn't chase a husband, I'd expose a liar. Before we start, I'd love to hear where you're watching from. If you enjoy the story, please hit like, subscribe, and join our community. It really helps us grow. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, the layers of my wedding dress spilling over my thighs like I was drowning in satin. The room was dim except for a single lamp glowing in the corner, warm and soft, completely at odds with how cold my chest felt. Ethan had stepped out for air almost an hour earlier. He said it lightly with that half smile he used when he wanted me to stop asking questions. I had laughed then, thinking he just needed a moment to breathe after the whirlwind of the day. But now it was nearly midnight, and the suite felt hollow without him. His jacket lay tossed across the armchair, one sleeve hanging off the edge. His phone sat on the nightstand beside me, screen lighting up every few seconds with notifications he wasn't here to read. Each buzz felt like a tap on my shoulder, reminding me I was the only one waiting tonight. I smoothed my hand over the beaded bodice of my dress, the fabric stiff under my palm. I'd imagined this moment so many times, our first night as husband and wife. I thought there'd be laughter, whispered jokes, the kind of tenderness movies make fun of because it's too sweet. Instead, I was sitting alone in a room that smelled faintly of roses and expensive hotel laundry detergent, listening to the hum of the mini fridge and the distant ding of the elevator down the hall. After the fourth or fifth buzz from his phone, I stood up abruptly. The skirt of my dress swished, heavy and loud in the quiet. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, the carpet muffling my footsteps as I called out softly, "Ethan." My voice sounded small. It echoed back at me in a way that made my cheeks heat. I tried again, louder, "Ethan." Nothing, just the low, steady whoosh of the hotel's air system. A couple walked past the far end of the hallway, the woman in flats carrying her heels in one hand, the man steadying her with an arm around her waist. They didn't look my way, but I imagined what they would think if they did, a bride wandering the hallway alone on her wedding night. I swallowed, suddenly aware of how ridiculous I looked, how overdressed and out of place. My throat tightened as I slipped back into the room and closed the door behind me with a soft click. The moment I sat back on the bed, something shifted. A sound, faint, muffled, filtered through the wall behind the headboard. At first, I thought it was just the hotel plumbing. Then I heard it again, a woman's low laugh, soft, breathy, followed by a man's voice. I froze. The man sounded familiar, too familiar. The cadence, the tone, it brushed so close to Ethan's voice that my stomach dropped. I leaned slightly toward the wall, barely breathing. The bed in the neighboring room creaked, slow at first, then quicker. A dull thud followed, a headboard bumping rhythmically. My skin prickled. No, no, it had to be a coincidence. A different couple, a different man, anyone else. But then the woman giggled again, closer to the wall this time, and the man said something I couldn't fully make out except for one word. A bride. Then laughter, both of them. The room felt like it tilted. My hands went numb. For a second, I thought I might be imagining it, that stress, exhaustion, champagne, all of it had mashed together into some twisted hallucination. But the sounds kept going, real, unmistakable. My pulse hammered in my ears as I stood and walked to the nightstand. Ethan's phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with the contact name blurred by my shaking vision. I didn't touch it at first. I just stared at it, at this device he kept so close to him every day, lying abandoned like I didn't matter enough for him to take it with him. I reached for it slowly. My fingers hovered before closing around it, the cool glass pressing into my palm. I swallowed the lump in my throat as another muffled laugh came through the wall. If he was going to disappear, if he was going to leave me alone on our wedding night, if he was going to make me sit here feeling stupid in a dress I hadn't even taken off yet, then I needed to know who had his attention while I sat alone. My thumb hovered over the screen as the phone buzzed once more. And I finally decided I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine, not tonight, not anymore. Morning came like a punishment. The curtains were half drawn, letting in a thin gray slice of light that made everything look colder. Our untouched breakfast tray, the stainless steel lids fogged on the inside. My bouquet from last night, wilted and slumped in the trash where I'd thrown it at dawn. The rumpled sheets I'd twisted through while barely sleeping. I sat on the edge of the bed in the hotel robe, my hair still pinned from the wedding, bobby pins digging into my scalp. My body felt heavy, like grief had settled on my shoulders during the night and refused to loosen its grip. Ethan finally emerged from the bathroom, humming softly, towel around his neck. as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't vanished at midnight, as if I hadn't spent half the night listening to the wall and trying not to break. Morning, he said, cracking his neck and reaching immediately for his phone. God, I'm drained. Yesterday was insane. He didn't look at me, not once. He unlocked his phone, thumb scrolling through notifications with this casual rhythm that made me feel stupid for even hoping he might ask how I was feeling. I poked at the cold eggs on the tray. The smell of room temperature sausage made my stomach twist. Did you sleep okay? I asked quietly. Barely, he muttered, still scrolling. People wouldn't stop messaging, and I swear the AC in here sounds like a truck. I swallowed. Can I ask where you went last night? You said you needed air, but you were gone for a while. He stopped scrolling, but he didn't lift his eyes. Lena, seriously. The way he said my name, flat, annoyed, made my shoulders shrink in. I'm just asking, I whispered. Well, it sounds like you're trying to start a fight, he snapped. On our first morning as a married couple, congrats. Heat crawled up my neck. I'm not trying to fight, I just. Then let it go, he said sharply. Don't ruin the day with your overthinking. Overthinking, the word stung more than it should have. I felt like a child being corrected for asking too many questions. I nodded, even though every instinct inside me knotted tighter, insisting something was wrong. He went back to scrolling, and the silence between us felt bigger than the sweet. By checkout time, managed to get dressed and braid my hair into something neat, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I told myself it was exhaustion, nerves, anything but what it truly was. At the front desk, the clerk smiled politely, tapping her keyboard. Just confirming checkout for Mr. and Mrs. Reed. I stood beside Ethan as she printed the folio. The paper slid out with a mechanical whir, and for a split second, before Ethan leaned in, I saw it. A second room number, under his name. And below it, a line item I barely had time to read. Romance. He moved fast, covering the page with his hand, laughing lightly. Oh, she doesn't need to worry about the paperwork. Honeymoon brain, right? He nudged my side like we were sharing an inside joke. The clerk's eyes flicked to mine, and the discomfort there, pity, maybe, burned worse than anything he'd said. I forced a smile, though my stomach had dropped to the floor. Once we were in the car, Ethan launched into a loud, enthusiastic monologue about his upcoming week, new clients, potential investors, how marriage was going to ground him and bring clarity to the studio. He talked so confidently it almost sounded convincing. I stared out the window, watching the city blur by. My breath fogged faintly against the glass. I didn't interrupt him. I didn't share my thoughts. I didn't tell him I wasn't listening. Because while he talked about the future, I was replaying the glimpse of that folio in my mind. The second room. The romance charge. The clerk's strained smile. My instincts weren't crazy. Something had happened last night, something he didn't want me to see. As he droned on beside me, I made a quiet decision. I was coming back to the hotel alone. I wanted the full statement, every line, every charge, every timestamp. I needed the truth in black and white, even if I already feared exactly what it would say. Today I know, the moment I made that decision was the moment the entire facade of our marriage began to crack. Boxes were still everywhere, piled beside the couch, stacked near the hallway, half opened with tissue paper spilling out like white confetti. The condo smelled like leftover wedding flowers and cardboard, a mix that should have felt festive but instead made the place feel cramped and cluttered. I kept telling myself we just needed our honeymoon to reset everything. Sun, rest, distance. A fresh start. I sat at the kitchen island, sipping cold coffee, trying to convince myself I still believed in that. Ethan was in the bedroom getting ready for the gym, humming off-key like he always did when he was distracted. I opened my laptop to check our travel details, mostly just to reassure myself nothing else cowl. D go wrong. But the first email at the top of my inbox made my heart drop. Your cancellation has been processed, honeymoon package. For a second, I thought maybe I had clicked something by accident. Maybe the resort had overbooked. Maybe anything but what it actually was. My hands shook as I opened the message. The screen filled with the refund confirmation, our names, our exact dates. The note saying the refund had already been deposited into our joint account. I stared at it, unable to blink. I never canceled anything. The bedroom door opened, and Ethan walked out tying his shoelaces, smelling faintly of his cedarwood deodorant. Hey, he said casually, you good? I turned the laptop toward him. Why does this say the honeymoon was canceled? He glanced at the screen for half a second. Oh, yeah, I had to cancel it. You had to, I repeated, my voice barely holding steady. An investor wants to meet next week. Huge potential, could change everything. He grabbed his keys from the counter, not noticing or not caring how stunned I looked. I can't skip it just to lie on a beach. I stared at him. Ethan, that was our honeymoon, you didn't even ask me. He let out a sigh, the kind that made me feel like I was bothering him. Lena, you're being selfish, seriously. This meeting is important, you're focusing on the wrong thing. Selfish. The word hit hard, like he'd flicked a switch inside me that made me immediately doubt myself. I just wish you'd talk to me first, I said quietly. And I wish you'd think long term, he shot back. God, this is what I mean, you get short-sighted. Emotional, I didn't want to stress you out with business stuff. Short-sighted. Emotional. Like I was incompetent for wanting the trip we'd planned together. He kissed the top of my head in a rushed, distracted way and left, the door clicking behind him. I sat there in silence, my coffee growing colder, the email still glowing on the screen. After a minute, I opened our joint bank account. The refund was there. And then, gone. The money had been rerouted within hours into Ethan's studio account. Several large transactions labeled equipment upgrades, marketing expenses, and then a final blow, a $420 charge from an upscale restaurant labeled client entertainment. My stomach twisted. I had been there once for a work dinner, dim lighting, tiny tables, romantic ambience. It was not the kind of place you entertained clients casually. I locked my phone and set it down, feeling a slow, simmering numbness spread through me. He hadn't just canceled the honeymoon. He had taken something meant for both of us and used it without a word, like my contributions were just collateral for his ambitions. That night he climbed into bed facing the wall, already half asleep, scrolling through his phone before turning it off without saying goodnight. The room was dark except for the faint glow from the streetlight outside, cutting a pale line across the ceiling. I lay awake staring at that line until my eyes burned. The silence between us felt heavier than the blankets. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, but the financial choices were right there in black and white, choices he made without me using money I had earned. And for the first time since the wedding, something inside me snapped into focus. I needed to start paying attention. Every dollar, every meeting, every explanation that didn't quite add up. Tonight I realized people don't hide things they're proud of. The moment I stepped into Ethan's studio, the air hit me, thick with sweat, protein shakes, and that sharp citrus cleaning spray they used between classes. Bright LEDs glared down on rows of equipment, everything humming with energy except me. I always felt slightly out of place here, like a guest in something I had quietly, unknowingly helped pay for. Boss, one of the trainers called, clapping Ethan on the shoulder as we walked in. Didn't think you'd ever settle down, man. Ethan laughed loud and easy. Yeah, well, life surprises you. The trainer glanced at me and gave a polite nod, the kind you give a stranger, not the owner's wife. Ethan didn't correct him, didn't say my name, didn't introduce me. I felt the familiar sting of being invisible beside him, like I was the accessory and he was the brand. He guided me toward his office, a cramped room barely bigger than a walk-in closet. Posters of fitness influencers covered the walls, and receipts and equipment catalogs cluttered the small desk. He shut the door behind us, immediately shifting into business mode. Okay, he said, rifling through a drawer, I need you to look over something. He pulled out a thick stack of papers and slid them toward me across the desk. The edges scratched slightly against my palms as I picked them up. What's this? Loan documents, he said with practiced confidence. The bank just needs your signature. Simple, it'll give us the capital to take the studio to the next level. IFL. Ip to the first page. The loan amount made my eyebrows twitch upward, way more than we'd ever discussed. My pulse quickened. I kept turning pages until a line of text seemed to glow on the paper. Collateral, primary residence, condo listed under Lena Carter. My condo, the place I bought before I even met him. I felt the blood drain from my face. Ethan, why is my home listed here? He waved a hand dismissively. It's just formality, we need strong collateral to get approval, you're overthinking it. Overthinking. There it was again, that word he used whenever he wanted me quiet. This is my home, I whispered, if something goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong, his tone sharpened. You said you believed in us, in the studio, in me. I kept scanning the pages, noticing how carefully the loan shielded him. If the business failed, his personal exposure was minimal, while mine was everything. The knot in my stomach pulled tight. Ethan leaned back, impatient. Come on, Len, don't make this complicated, just sign so I can send it back. I want Aunt Rachel to look at it first, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. She's a lawyer, it's smart to have someone review it. His expression snapped from confident to irritated. Seriously, you're dragging your family into our business now. Our business, I echoed. You didn't even tell me about this loan, you didn't discuss any of this. Because you stress, he shot back. You always think the worst. I need a partner who trusts me, not someone who slows everything down. Partner. He said the word like a challenge, not an invitation. I looked at the documents again, feeling cold everywhere. I'm not signing this today. His jaw clenched. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to argue more, push harder, but something in my expression must have told him I was done. Fine, he muttered, yanking the papers back. Whatever. The drive home was silent. He gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, while his jaw worked back and forth like he was rehearsing all the things he wasn't saying. I stared out the window, the city passing in blurred streaks of gray and neon. My phone sat in my lap. I turned it on and typed a message to Aunt Rachel with shaking fingers. Can we meet? It's important. I hit send before I could second guess myself. Then another thought surfaced, sharp and undeniable. I still hadn't pulled the full hotel record. I needed to. I needed to stop pretending everything made sense. I needed answers in writing, not in Ethan's shifting explanations. As we pulled into the driveway, he exhaled loudly as if he were the one exhausted by all of this. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because something inside me had quietly clicked into place. Today I understand. The moment he asked me to risk my home to protect his dream was the moment I finally began protecting myself. The moment I walked back into the boutique hotel, my heartbeat kicked up like it was trying to outrun me. The lobby looked exactly the same as it had 2 nights earlier, soft gold lighting, the faint smell of vanilla and orchids, a pianist playing something slow near the lounge. But I wasn't the same woman who had walked through here in a wedding dress. I felt smaller now, heavier, like I was carrying something sharp inside my chest. A young clerk at the front desk looked up and straightened. Recognition flickered in her eyes. "Hello, you're the bride, right?" she said gently, almost cautiously, as if the word itself might bruise me. I nodded. Yes, I need a full, detailed statement for all charges under Ethan Reed's reservation for the night of our wedding. My voice sounded controlled, but my fingers trembled where they twisted the strap of my bag. The clerk's smile faded into something softer. She turned to the computer, typing slowly, her brow tightening as the screen filled. "I can print that for you," she said quietly, then she hesitated. "Just to confirm, this includes everything on the reservation, even the additional room." The words additional room thudded in my ears. My stomach clenched. "Yes," I whispered, "everything." She searched my face, maybe checking if she should warn me again, but I held her gaze. I needed this. I needed the truth in writing, not in vague suspicions and half-heard sounds through a wall. She pressed a button, the printer behind her whirred to life, spitting out page after page. The pages curled as they landed, forming a weighty stack. When she placed the folio on the counter, it felt almost ceremonial, like she understood she was handing me the story of my own heartbreak. "Here you go," she said softly. My hands were cold as I picked it up. The first few lines were simple: our suite number, the room rate, the late checkout, nothing shocking, nothing new. Then my eyes dropped to the next section. Room 414, added at 11:47 p.m. The timestamp hit me like ice water. I remembered looking at the clock, 11:52, sitting alone in a wedding dress, telling myself he'd be right. Buck. I forced myself to read the next lines. Romance package deluxe tier. Champagne delivery 12:02 a.m. Rose petal turn down completed. Companion name Kay Lawson. For a second the page blurred. I blinked hard, trying to steady my vision, but the letters didn't change. Kay Lawson. Kelsey. My maid of honors. My best friend. The woman who held my bouquet during portraits, who teared up while fastening the buttons of my dress, who whispered, "You deserve everything good," right before I walked down the aisle. I stared at her name printed neatly beneath the word companion, as if it belonged there, as if this entire betrayal were just another itemized hotel charge. My breath wavered. The lobby sounds faded, the piano, the murmur of guests checking in, the soft hum of the air vents, everything dropped away until there was just the paper and the roaring in my ears. The creaking bed I heard through the wall. The muffled laughter. The joke about the bride. The way Ethan never returned to our suite. The abandoned phone buzzing beside me. It all snapped together with brutal clarity. They had been next door. On my wedding night. While I sat alone in my dress, imagining a future they were already destroying. I didn't cry, I thought I might, but nothing came. It was like the sadness had burned through me too quickly, leaving only a hollow heat behind. "Do you need a copy emailed too?" the clerk asked softly. I shook my head. "No, this is enough." She nodded with a sympathy that made my throat tighten. I folded the pages carefully, smoothing the edges as if the neatness would help me hold myself together. I slipped them into my bag, feeling the weight settle against my hip. Walking out of the lobby felt surreal. The glass doors opened automatically, letting in a slice of cold air that snapped me back into my body. I stepped onto the sidewalk, gripping my bag so tightly my knuckles ached. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the street, waiting for the world to tilt back into place. But it didn't, because nothing was the same anymore. I didn't storm back to confront Ethan. I didn't call Kelsey screaming. I didn't collapse onto the pavement. Not yet. Rage was rising, but something stronger held it down: strategy. If Ethan had asked me to risk my condo, if he had hidden financial decisions already, then confronting him with only emotion would be a trap. I needed evidence. I needed clarity. I needed to understand the full scale of what he and Kelsey had done before I made a single move. I took a long breath that scraped painfully down my throat and started walking toward my car. The papers shifted inside my bag, their edges poking lightly against the fabric, reminding me of every truth I had just swallowed. Today I know that walk from the hotel wasn't just leaving, it was the beginning of my return to myself. The condo felt smaller that evening, the lights dim, the TV flickering silently in the background like a heartbeat I didn't trust. I sat on the edge of the couch with the hotel statement folded tightly in my hand, the paper already softening from how many times I'd gripped it on the drive home. Ethan sat across from me in his usual spot, legs stretched out, scrolling on his phone like this was any normal night and we weren't sitting on the edge of something enormous. "I need to talk to you," I said quietly. He didn't look up right away. He sighed, locked his phone, and finally gave me his attention. "Okay, what now?" I unfolded the folio slowly, smoothing it across my knees. "I went back to the hotel today." His jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "I asked for the full statement from our wedding night," I continued. I kept my voice steady, even though my throat felt swollen. "There was a second room, added under your name, at 11:47 p.m. His eyes narrowed, but he stayed silent. "There was a romance package, champagne at 12:02, rose petals, and a companion name." My breath shook. "K. Lawson Kelsey." For a moment he didn't move. His face didn't crumble or soften, it hardened. "Seriously," he snapped, "you're digging through hotel records now?" I blinked, stunned by the deflection. "Ethan, you were gone for hours on our wedding night, I heard." "I helped her," he cut in sharply, leaning forward. "She was drunk, she couldn't get home. I put her in a room to sleep it off." "With champagne and rose petals," I whispered. He scoffed. "That wasn't for her. You're reading too much into it. You always do this, Lena, you twist things." My stomach twisted. The times match exactly with the noises I... "Oh my God," he threw his hands up. "So now you're spying on me, listening through walls, accusing me based on some sounds. You really want to tear us apart over your paranoia." The words hit like slaps: paranoid, twisting things, spying. I shook my head, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm not accusing you without reason. Your name was on the room. Kelsey's name was." "You're obsessed," he snapped, pointing at the folio like it was something filthy. "This is toxic, Lena. You're trying to destroy the only good thing we have, everything I'm building for us, and you want to tear it down because you can't control your imagination." Heat rushed to my face. "I'm asking for the truth." "No," he said, voice low and sharp. "You're trying to sabotage me, right when I'm finally getting real traction at the studio. You don't care about us, you're just jealous, insecure. You always do this when I'm close to something big." My pulse pounded in my ears. "This isn't about the studio." "It's always about the studio," he shouted. "My reputation, my focus, it all depends on stability. And you're over here playing detective, embarrassing yourself. These issues of yours, they could sink everything." I stared at him, the world going strangely quiet around his words, because it became painfully clear he wasn't worried about our marriage. He wasn't worried about the betrayal or the lies. He was worried about his image, his business, his money. He pushed up from the couch, snatched the folio from my lap, and slapped it onto the coffee table so hard the pages fanned out. "I'm done talking about this," he said through clenched teeth. "If you can't trust me, that's your problem, not mine." Then he stormed down the hall, his footsteps heavy, and slammed the bedroom door so hard the walls shook. I sat there for a long moment, the silence ringing. The TV flickered blue light across the room, painting everything cold. My hands felt numb, my legs too, but my mind was suddenly painfully awake. He wasn't going to tell me the truth. He wasn't going to admit anything. He wasn't going to protect me or our home or our marriage. He was protecting himself. And if he could lie like that to my face without blinking, then what else had he hidden? I stood slowly, walked to the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. The keys felt cool under my fingers, almost soothing. He had given me his passwords months ago when I was helping with bills, back when he still pretended we were a team. I typed them in one by one, steady and silent. Cloud backups, messages, financial apps. Everything he thought I wouldn't check. If he was going to gaslight me, then I would let the truth speak for itself. Today I understand, doubt wasn't my enemy, his lies were. The kitchen felt too bright. The overhead light hummed softly, washing the counters in a harsh yellow glow that made everything look sharper than it should at midnight. I sat at the table with my laptop open, the screen reflecting in the dark window like a second version of me, one who looked steadier than I felt. I typed in Ethan's cloud login, the same password he gave me when he wanted me to help organize bills. My fingers hesitated only once before pressing enter. The loading icon spun, and spun, and spun. Then his entire message history began populating the screen, threads dropping into place, icons lighting up one by one. I swallowed hard, my pulse thudding in my ears. Near the top was a conversation labeled K kiss mark. My chest tightened. He had never used an emoji with me, not once. I clicked. The thread opened like a trapdoor beneath me. Months of messages, months filled the screen, flirty comments, inside jokes, complaints about planning the wedding and how much pressure I supposedly put on him, screenshots of me asking about guest lists or seating charts followed by Kelsey replying, "She's too trusting, you're lucky. Lucky. Lucky to have a wife he could openly mock." My hands went cold, I scrolled further. There were photos, nothing explicit but too intimate. Her in gym clothes, her hair messy after a workout, her sneakers kicked off. Captions like, "Thinking about you. Can't believe we pulled off last night," face with tears of joy. Then messages referencing me directly. "Ethan, she'll go along with anything if I frame it as smart for the future." "Kelsey, of course she will, she thinks you're perfect." "Ethan, her condo will stabilize the loan. After that, we're set." My breath caught. Her condo, not our home. Her condo, my property, my savings, my stability. They talked about it like it was a coupon they found on the street. I scrolled further, my fingertips numb against the trackpad. Then I saw it. "Kelsey, did you cancel the honeymoon?" "Ethan, yeah, funds moved. She won't question it once I frame it right." "Kelsey, you owe me a proper wedding night winking face." "Ethan, you already got one smirking face." My heart stopped. That single message, 8 words, confirmed everything. Every sound I heard through that hotel wall. Every doubt. Every instinct. I felt something inside me go still, the kind of stillness that comes right before a storm. I clicked out of the thread before I could fall apart and opened another one, this one with a contact saved as Mark, advisor. Except nothing about the messages sounded professional. "Ethan, she's ideal funding, trustworthy, emotional enough to agree if I frame it as support." "Mark, get her to sign the paperwork. Collateral from her side makes approval easy." "Ethan, she won't understand the risks. She never does." "Mark, then don't explain the risks." My mouth went dry. They spoke about me the way one might talk about a credit card with a high limit, not a wife, not a partner, a resource. More messages lined up with real events. "Mark, if honeymoon money is freed up, reallocate to branding push. Tell her it's for the future." "Ethan, already done." "Mark, and the room situation." "Ethan, handled, she won't see the record." He really thought that. He really believed I would stay quiet, stay blind, stay grateful. The final blow came when I scrolled to a message from Kelsey, sent the night before the wedding. "By tomorrow you'll have everything you need. She'll sign whatever you put in front of her, just get her emotional first." My stomach twisted so violently I had to grip the edge of the table. It wasn't an affair that happened on impulse. It wasn't stress or temptation. It wasn't even about love. It was a coordinated plan. A strategy. A blueprint for how to use me, drain me, and replace me. And they'd executed it together with the same ease they used to joke about me behind my back. My breathing steadied, slow, deliberate. The pain hadn't vanished, it had simply shifted into something cold and sharp, something focused. I pressed print. The printer in the corner of the kitchen whirred to life, each page sliding out warm and damning. I collected them carefully, organizing them with the hotel folio, aligning the edges until the stack looked clean and undeniable. Evidence, not emotion. When I finished, I slipped everything into a folder, the paper edges faintly scratching my palm. In the morning, I would take all of it to Aunt Rachel. And this time, I wouldn't accept excuses or apologies or explanations crafted to make me doubt myself. Because now I had proof. Today I know betrayal hurts, but evidence is power. Aunt Rachel's office was all glass and angles, clear walls, clean lines, sunlight pouring in from every direction. It made me feel both exposed and oddly safe, like there was no place for lies to hide here. I sat across from her at the long conference table, the hotel folio and the printed messages spread out between us. My voice wavered only once as I started speaking, but I forced it steady. I wanted to be believable. I wanted to be taken seriously. I told her everything, what I'd heard through the hotel wall, the second room, Kelsey's name, Ethan's excuses, the messages that turned my stomach, all of it. My hands shook in small tremors, but my words didn't, not this time. Aunt Rachel didn't interrupt. She didn't gasp or grab my hand or react with the easy sympathy I might have gotten from someone else. She just read. Her jaw tightened gradually, her eyes sharpening with every page she turned. She handled each sheet the way a surgeon handles tools, carefully, decisively, like precision mattered. When she finally looked up, she exhaled slowly. Lena, how much money have you put into Ethan's studio? I blinked. I don't know, I mean, I helped with a few things. Rent when he started, some equipment, marketing once, just little things. How much? She repeated, her lawyer voice cutting through any softness. I swallowed, maybe 20,000, 25 over a couple years. And what did you sign when you gave him that money? Nothing, I said quickly, embarrassed. It wasn't business, it was support. I thought we were building a life together, they were just informal agreements. Verbal, I didn't need paperwork. Aunt Rachel's expression did something I'd only seen in courtrooms, this tight, deliberate shift from concern to strategy. She stood, walked to a filing cabinet, and pulled out a thin blue folder. When she sat back down, she slid it toward me. I knew this day might come, she said. Open it. My fingers hesitated, then lifted the cover. Inside were documents, copies of signatures, notarized forms, a ledger I barely remembered signing. What is this? I whispered. This, she said, tapping the page, is what I drafted when you first told me you were helping Ethan financially. You said you trusted him, that it was just love, but I insisted on structuring your contributions as an investment. 51% ownership of the studio. Your money, your risk, your equity. I stared at the paperwork, the words blurring for a moment before snapping into focus. I own 51%, my voice cracked. Yes, she said, legally, on paper, whether he likes it or not. He may run the day-to-day, but you are the majority owner of his precious business. A wave of disbelief and clarity crashed over me. Ethan had built his ego around that studio, called it his lifeline, his identity. He talked about it like it was a kingdom he ruled alone. And all this time, the real power belonged to me. And he didn't even know it. I leaned back in my chair, the glass walls reflecting my stunned expression. For the first time since the wedding night, something inside me straightened. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't cornered. I wasn't some naive wallet he could drain. Aunt Rachel folded her hands. Here's what we're going to do. The firmness in her voice steadied me. You are not signing anything he puts in front of you. Not one line, not one form. You continue gathering evidence, screenshots, bank statements, anything that shows his misuse of funds and his attempts to leverage your assets. I nodded, my pulse slowing into something like resolve. And she continued, we will organize a family dinner. Both sides, parents, close relatives, a neutral setting. Ethan believes he still controls the narrative. He thinks if he pressures you in front of everyone, he'll get what he wants. I pictured his confident, polished voice, the way he dismissed my concerns as emotional or dramatic, the way he counted on me to fold in front of others. Shame prickled in my chest, but it was quickly replaced by something steadier. And at that dinner, Aunt Rachel said, sliding the hotel folio closer to me, you will present everything. The affair, the financial manipulation, the documents showing your majority ownership. Let him try to spin this in front of witnesses, it will backfire. A slow, unfamiliar feeling spread through me, power. Not revenge yet, not triumph, but the knowledge that I wasn't walking into this fight empty-handed. He had underestimated me. He had underestimated my family. He had underestimated the truth. I gathered the papers, stacking them carefully, the edges aligning with a satisfying click. Rachel, I whispered, thank you. This isn't mercy, she said. It's leverage, use it. As I stood to leave, the glass walls reflected a woman who looked tired, yes, but no longer lost. My hand still shook, but this time it was adrenaline, not fear. Today I understand. Sometimes the difference between being powerless and powerful is simply knowing what you already own. The private room smelled like warm bread, basil, and the faint sweetness of red wine, comforting scents that did nothing to ease the knot in my stomach. A long wooden table ran down the center of the room, candles flickering in little glass holders. Both sets of parents were already seated when I walked in. My mom offered a hopeful smile, my dad squeezed my shoulder, but their eyes were searching me, worried. Ethan's parents sat across from them, whispering to each other, glancing toward the door like they were expecting a performance. We were all waiting for Ethan. Of course we were. The plan was that we were here to talk things out. That's what he'd told them. Not the truth, not the affair, not the money, not the manipulation, just some vague marital misunderstanding that he assumed he could spin into sympathy. The door swung open 15 minutes late. Ethan walked in with the confidence of someone who believed the room already belonged to him. He kissed his mother's cheek, shook his father's hand, clapped my dad on the back. And then he finally looked at me. A nod, barely that, as if I were a colleague he'd bumped into accidentally. He took the seat beside his mother and sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. Thanks for coming, everyone. It's been a lot lately. I just wanted support while we clear the air. His mother touched his arm. Sweetheart, we're here for you. I felt my jaw tighten. He launched into his speech effortlessly, like he'd practiced it on the drive. Look, running the studio has been stressful. We're expanding. I'm dealing with serious investor pressure, and instead of support, I'm getting accusations at home. He gave the room a weary, pained expression. Lena S. been suspicious, emotional, reading into things that aren't there. His parents frowned at me, a unified wall of disapproval. My mom's eyebrows shot up, my dad stiffened. Ethan kept going, gaining momentum. She's making wild claims about my business decisions, questioning where I go, who I meet with. It's damaging. She even implied things about Kelsey, which is insane. Kelsey S. been nothing but a supportive friend. He shook his head. I need her to stop attacking me and trust me instead of. I placed the hotel folio in the middle of the table. The sound of it hitting the wood, soft but final, cut him off. Everyone looked at it, then at me. I'd like you all to see why I'm here, I said calmly. My voice didn't shake. I'm not emotional, I'm not imagining things, I'm showing you facts. Ethan's eyes widened slightly. Not fear, irritation, the look of someone whose script had just been interrupted. I unfolded the pages and pointed to the first set of lines. This is the charge for our wedding suite. And this, I slid my finger down the page, is the second room, opened under his name, at 11:47 p.m. Ethan's mother blinked. Second room. My dad leaned forward. What second room? I continued steady. There was a romance package, champagne, rose petals, delivered at 12:02 a.m. The same time I heard laughter through the wall. I flipped to the line that mattered most. And here is the companion name, Kay Lawson. The room fell silent so completely that I heard the candle flame flicker. Kelsey, my mother whispered. Ethan shot to his feet. This is ridiculous. She was drunk. I helped her because I'm a good person. Lena is twisting. I lifted the stack of printed messages and set them beside the folio. These are from his phone backups, months of conversations. His father looked at him sharply. Conversations about what? I opened the thread with K kiss mark. The hearts and emojis looked obscene in the soft candlelight. About their affair, about mocking me, about using my savings and my condo to fund his business expansion. I read the lines out loud, the ones that left no room for interpretation. My mother gasped when she heard the part about me being too trusting. My dad muttered something under his breath, low, furious. Ethan's face flushed red. You had no right to go through. I spoke over him. This is the part where they discuss canceling our honeymoon to reallocate funds. His parents stared at him in disbelief. And then I reached for the last set of documents, the ones from Aunt Rachel's file. I placed them gently on top of everything else. These, I said, are the ownership papers for the studio, the ones Aunt Rachel drafted when I invested in you years ago. I looked directly at him. I own 51%, not you. If a bomb had gone off under the table, the reaction wouldn't have been more dramatic. His mother covered her mouth. His father's eyes went wide. My parents stared at me with shock and pride. Ethan staggered back a step as if someone had physically shoved him. What are you talking about? That's not, those can't. They're legal, I said, and binding. He sputtered, his confidence dissolving. Lena, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I stood, my hands steady as I gathered the pages into a neat stack. I've already hired a divorce attorney. I won't be signing any loans. I won't be putting my condo at risk. And I will be protecting my majority stake in the studio. He stared at me like he'd never seen me before, his mouth hanging open, his parents horrified beside him. For the first time, he looked powerless. Today I know truth doesn't just hurt, it rearranges the entire room. A few days later, I was back in Aunt Rachel's glass-walled office, but this time the table between us wasn't covered in evidence. It was covered in divorce papers, drafts, revisions, highlighted clauses, and numbered exhibits. The room smelled faintly of printer ink and peppermint tea, the kind Aunt Rachel always kept on her desk. I sat with my hands clasped, palms damp, staring at the stack that represented the end of something I once thought was forever. Take your time, Aunt Rachel said, sliding a pen toward me. Her tone wasn't soft or pitying, more like a steady anchor. I read through the pages again. protection of my condo, separation of assets, acknowledgement of my majority stake in the studio, limitations on his ability to make large withdrawals or new debts. Every line felt like recovering a part of myself. By noon, Ethan had officially been served. My phone buzzed almost instantly. Then again, a rapid fire of notifications that made the screen jump in my hand. Ethan, unbelievable. You're being vindictive. This is dramatic even for you. You're trying to take him. Why, Jim? Wow. Gold digger vibes, not surprising. The words stung not because I believed them, but because they were so effortlessly cruel, so quick, like this was always how he saw me beneath the performance. I turned the phone face down. Aunt Rachel skimmed through my messages, her mouth tightening. Do not respond, she said. Let his lawyer do the talking. Right on cue, her assistant knocked and handed over an email packet from Ethan's attorney. It was polished, formal, and dripping with passive-aggressive undertones. Ethan's lawyer argued that I had been a passive partner, that my investments were informal spousal support, that I was entitled to nothing more than a modest payout in exchange for transferring full control of the studio to Ethan. I felt my stomach twist. He's acting like I never touched the business. Aunt Rachel tapped the documents. That won't fly. We have the paperwork, the bank transfers, the messages, and the ownership structure is airtight. She flipped to a section she'd highlighted. Here, my filings make your majority stake indisputable. I exhaled, the tension easing slightly. Then another email came through from Ethan's lawyer again, more posturing. If Mrs. Reed refuses our reasonable offer, Mr. Reed is prepared to walk away and establish a new studio. She will be left with paper ownership of a failing brand. In other words, a threat, a bluff dressed up as confidence. Aunt Rachel snorted, a tiny, entertained sound. He thinks building a business is like ordering new gym towels. Investors will run from him the second they see the court filings. But Ethan didn't seem to understand how shallow his power was without secrecy. His next message to me said, You're ruining both our lives over nothing. Just sign the damn papers. I didn't reply. Rachel spread new papers across the table, diagrams, flowcharts, financial snapshots. Here's what you can demand, she said. A full accounting of studio finances, restrictions on assets, a freeze on major decisions, and if he tries to hide money, we subpoena. Judges hate games like that. Her voice was calm, steady, surgical. I looked at the ownership documents again, the signatures, the dates, the seals. The realization washed over me slowly but powerfully. He truly believed I would crumble the moment he raised his voice. He had built an entire life on the assumption that I would never check, question, or claim what was already mine. But I wasn't begging for clarity anymore. I was enforcing boundaries. We set mediation, Aunt Rachel said, sliding her calendar toward me. He wants a war, we give him procedure instead. I nodded, okay. For the first time in weeks, my voice didn't shake. When I walked out of the office into the cool afternoon air, I felt taller, not confident yet but grounded. My life wasn't blowing apart, it was reassembling itself into something honest, something mine. My phone buzzed again with another angry message from Ethan, but I didn't even check it. I slipped the device into my bag like it no longer belonged at the center of my world. Today I know ending a marriage isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the first true act of self-respect. The office felt louder than usual, keyboards clattering, phones ringing, people laughing too hard at jokes that didn't land. I sat at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet ID opened 10 minutes earlier without processing a single number. My coffee had gone cold beside my mouse untouched. Everything looked normal, but I felt like someone had peeled a layer of insulation off my skin. Every sound hit sharper now. Across the aisle, two coworkers were whispering while pretending to compare calendar notes. She just walked out, no counseling, one murmured. Ethan said she shut down, he's devastated. Apparently she's cold, like emotionally cold. That one stung more than I wanted it to. Cold, detached, the opposite of who I'd been in that marriage, too warm, too forgiving, too willing to believe him even when reality scraped against my intuition like sandpaper. I lowered my eyes to my keyboard, pretending not to hear. Another voice chimed in from the hallway. Some people don't know how to work on a marriage, they run the second it gets hard. A sharp pain pricked just under my ribs. Shame, thin, familiar, unwelcome, tried to creep back in. The shame he planted, the kind that whispered maybe you were the problem, maybe if you were more supportive, more trusting, quieter. I closed my eyes for a second, grounding myself with the rhythm of my breathing and the hum of the office lights overhead. A chair creaked beside me. Megan from the social team leaned slightly over the divider. Hey, are you okay? Her voice was gentle, not nosy, not performative, just curious in a human way. I opened my eyes and managed a small smile, just tired. You look more than tired, she said, pulling a chair over. Without waiting for permission, she sat, elbows on her knees, studying my face. I don't want to pry, but I've heard people talking and I know you and Ethan split, and this is me offering an actual safe ear. No judgment, just a listener. For a moment I just stared at her, unsure if the tightness in my throat was relief or fear. I hadn't told anyone at work anything real. I didn't want the pity, the gossip, the tilted heads. But something about the sincerity in her eyes cracked my silence. I exhaled slowly. It wasn't just a split. My voice came out softer than I intended. It was everything. She stayed quiet, exactly the way someone should when they're letting you take your time. So I told her, not all at once, in drifting pieces. The wedding night, the sounds through the wall, the hotel folio and the romance package time-stamped at midnight. Kelsey's name, the betrayal inside the betrayal. The messages where they laughed about me, strategized around me, calculated my value like I was a spreadsheet line item. The honeymoon they canceled behind my back. The loan that almost took my condo. The ownership papers that gave me more power than Ethan ever intended. By the time I finished, Megan's lips were pressed into a thin, furious line. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Lena, that's not a marriage falling apart, that's a setup, a con." I nodded without meaning to. "This wasn't your fault," she said, leaning in. "He didn't break vows, he never intended to keep them." And Megan, shook her head, disgusted. "She's not a friend, she's a parasite." The anger in her voice startled me. Not pity, not sympathy. Anger for me, the kind I hadn't let myself feel fully yet. She sat back. "Have you ever listened to that podcast where women share their breakup stories? Or the blog that publishes anonymous submissions? You should tell your story." I blinked. "Me, why?" "Because women like him count on silence," she said. "Count on shame. Your story would help someone else recognize red flags before it's too late." That idea, my trauma becoming someone else's warning, someone else's clarity, hit me somewhere deep and aching. That night, after dinner and dishes and a shower that ran too hot, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote. Not the whole thing, but enough: the wedding night, the betrayal, the financial manipulation. I anonymized names, places, details. My hands trembled as I hit submit. It was accepted the next day. And when it posted, the comments came: women saying they had lived versions of my story. Women thanking me, women calling me brave, not crazy, smart, not suspicious, strong, not cold. Strangers saw me more clearly than my own husband ever had. When mediation day came, I walked toward the building, my documents in a neat folder and my spine just a little straighter. Today I know, sometimes it takes other women's voices to remind you your own was never wrong. The mediation room felt colder than any courtroom I'd ever seen on TV. No dramatic lighting, no judge's bench, just a long rectangular table under fluorescent lights that hummed faintly overhead. Legal folders were stacked like little barricades on every side. I sat on one end beside Aunt Rachel, who looked like calm wrapped in steel. Across from us sat Ethan and his lawyer, a polished man in a too dark suit and a face trained to smirk without moving. Ethan didn't look at me, not really. His eyes flicked over me the way someone glances at a stranger on a bus, brief, distant, uninterested. But then the mediator walked in and suddenly he transformed. His shoulders straightened, his smile warmed, his voice softened into this carefully practiced mix of humility and charm. "Thank you for making time for us," he told the mediator, extending a hand. "I'm really hoping we can clear up some misunderstandings here. My wife, well, soon-to-be ex-wife, is a good person. She's just overwhelmed. Emotional. This year has been stressful for both of us." I felt my jaw shift as I bit the inside of my cheek. Emotional, the word again, always that weapon. The mediator nodded politely without committing to a reaction. Ethan continued, gesturing toward the folders like he was presenting a business pitch. "The truth is, I've poured my whole life into my studio, and I've tried to guide Lena through things she didn't always understand, financially speaking. So some of these accusations," he gave a rehearsed sigh, "they've been blown out of proportion." His lawyer clicked his pen dramatically, as if punctuation could make lies true. Aunt Rachel didn't flinch. She simply opened her folder, slid a timeline across the table, and cleared her throat. "Let's begin." The mediator adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Reed, Mrs. Reed, I'm here to facilitate clarity, so let's go through the facts." Aunt Rachel started, calm, precise, deadly. First, Lena's financial contributions. She placed documented transfers on the table, totaling over $20,000 plus early operational expenses. LL structured formally as an investment. Here, she tapped the notarized form, is the document establishing Lena as the majority owner of the studio. Ethan's jaw twitched. She didn't understand what she was signing. "She absolutely did," Rachel said smoothly, "and so did you." Next came the honeymoon refund diversion. The mediator held up the bank printout, her brows lifting. This refund was moved within hours to cover your business expenses. Ethan shifted. It was temporary. It wasn't discussed, Rachel said, not once. Then came the hotel folio. The mediator scanned it, her lips tightening. A second room, a romance package under your name. Ethan's voice cracked on his first attempt to speak. He coughed, tried again. I explained Kelsey was drunk. I was being considerate, that's all. The charges were mix-ups, miscommunications. The mediator looked unconvinced. Then came the chat logs. When she reached the part about ideal funding and reallocating the honeymoon money, Ethan's face flushed dark. He interrupted. Those messages were taken out of context. I was venting, people vent, it doesn't mean. And mocking your wife, Rachel asked softly, calling her too trusting, scheduling a loan meeting and strategizing how to make her sign away her condo, was that venting too? He glared at me then, something sharp and ugly flickering through his expression. We were under pressure. Things get said in private conversations. The mediator scribbled notes. There are multiple issues here. Misuse of joint funds, lack of financial transparency, and potential breach of fiduciary duty between business partners. Ethan leaned forward, angry now. She's trying to destroy everything I built. You did that yourself, Aunt Rachel said, her voice low but edged. We're simply revealing it. The mediator turned fully to Ethan. Why were joint marital funds rooted into the studio without discussion? It was my business, he snapped. Not legally, Rachel corrected. It belongs to her more than it belongs to you. He slammed his hand on the table. Fine, I crossed lines, personally and financially, but it wasn't malicious, it was stress, mistakes. He said the word like it was supposed to erase everything. Mistakes, he repeated, people make them. The mediator stared at him for a long moment before summarizing. Given the documentation and the imbalance of financial transparency, the preliminary settlement terms will reflect Mrs. Reed's need for protection. Her condo remains solely hers. Evaluation of the studio must be conducted. Options include a substantial payout or restructuring ownership. His lawyer turned toward him sharply. Ethan, I advise accepting these terms before this escalates further. But Ethan pushed back his chair suddenly, the legs scraping loud across the floor. No, I'm not signing anything today. He stood up so fast his water bottle toppled and rolled. He didn't pick it up. He didn't look at me. He just stormed out of the room, the door slamming behind him hard enough to make the glass wall vibrate. His lawyer sighed, already gathering papers. We'll reconvene. I sat still, breathing slowly, the room settling around me like dust. For the first time, I didn't feel like a woman defending her pain. I felt like a woman confirming her boundaries. Today I understand, the truth doesn't need to shout. It just waits for the lies to collapse under their own weight. I spent the next few months inside a condo that no longer felt haunted. The walls were a softer color now, warm cream instead of the cool gray Ethan always insisted made the space look modern. I'd replaced the couch too. The old one held too many memories of him sprawled across it, legs stretched, phone in hand, dismissing me with barely a glance. This new one was soft, velvet, deep green. When I sat on it, I felt held, not tolerated. That afternoon, sunlight filtered through the new curtains, casting moving patches across the rug as I read through the email my lawyer had just sent. It outlined the near-final settlement terms. Clean, favorable, protected. Each line felt like a stitch closing a long, jagged wound. My phone buzzed again, another message from someone I barely kept up with, sending screenshots of Ethan's latest social media post. He was telling the world he was rebuilding from scratch after being taken for everything by a vindictive ex-wife. He'd posted a selfie outside some half-leased space with a caption about rising from betrayal. The comments were full of posted emojis, broken hearts, muscle arms, prayer hands. His followers cheering him on, calling him a survivor. I didn't respond, I didn't even waste a breath on anger, because I knew something his followers didn't. People with real money, investors, vendors, landlords, don't take captions at face value. They check records, they check filings, they check court documents and financial histories, they check things he'd never bothered to hide well. By the next week, I heard from a mutual acquaintance, someone who'd always been half impressed, half exhausted by Ethan's theatrics. She told me investors were pulling out quietly. One had even said he doesn't understand contracts or ethics. Pass. I pictured Ethan's smile faltering when he realized charm couldn't override paper trails. His original studio wasn't doing well either. Word spread about the divorce, the canceled honeymoon funds, the financial inconsistencies. Even if people didn't know the exact details, the scent of scandal clung to him like sweat after a long workout. Clients left. Membership numbers dipped. Staff quit. First the front desk girl who always wore neon sneakers, then one of the trainers, then the manager he bragged about poaching from a competitor. One night, while scrolling, I stumbled across a review online. Studio used to be great, but lately everything feels messy. No one gets paid on time, something S going on. Another reads, feels like a sinking ship, sad honestly. It didn't feel sad to me, not exactly, more like inevitable. And then there was Kelsey. I didn't follow her, but people sent screenshots unasked, DMs, whispers, updates. Her social circle shrank. The girls she used to brunch with on Sundays slowly pulled away. At first, they probably didn't want to choose sides, but eventually the truth leaked out in pieces. She'd slept with my husband on my wedding night. She mocked me while helping him access my savings. She bragged about him behind my back while hugging me in public. Once people realized that she wasn't the glamorous, carefree gym girl friend anymore, she was the cautionary tale, the woman who helped orchestrate her best friend's humiliation. Even people who weren't friends with me wanted distance from that. One screenshot caught me off guard, a message someone sent me late one night. She's crying in the bathroom at our friend's party. No one is comforting her. She did this to herself. I didn't reply. I didn't feel satisfaction or pity. Just a strange, quiet understanding that actions echo long after the moment passes. By the beginning of the fourth month, the final legal terms were ready. My condo was officially mine, entirely, unquestionably, without any shared claim. The studio outcome came in two options: a strong buyout or retaining a beneficial share while Ethan stepped entirely away from control. Either way, I wasn't losing anything I'd built. He was losing what he'd tried to steal. On the day I signed the final settlement papers, my hands were steady, steadier than I expected. Rachel sat beside me, her reading glasses perched low as she reviewed everything one last time. Ready? She asked. I nodded, picked up the pen, and signed my name across the final line. A clean signature, a clean ending. When it was done, I sat back in my chair. The room felt lighter, as if soam. Ian had opened a window I didn't know could open. Rachel squeezed my hand gently, but she didn't say congratulations or I'm sorry. She knew those weren't the right words. I didn't cheer, I didn't cry, I didn't even feel triumphant. I felt resolved. Because his downfall wasn't something I crafted. It wasn't revenge I engineered. It was his own greed, his own arrogance, his own disregard for the person he promised to love. It was every choice he'd made, piled one on top of the other until the weight collapsed on him. He walked himself into ruin. I just stopped following him. When I stepped outside into the crisp air, I took my first full breath in months. Today I understand, the end wasn't punishment, it was consequence. Time had a strange way of smoothing itself out after the storm. One day I woke up and realized my condo no longer felt like a battlefield or a storage unit of memories I was trying to forget. The walls were a warm, pale almond now, repainted on a Saturday morning when sunlight streamed through the windows, and I finally felt ready to choose a color that wasn't picked for market value or neutral tone. I rearranged the furniture twice until it felt right, until the room felt like it wrapped around me, not around the ghost of who Ethan wanted me to be. There was no trace of him anymore, no gym-branded water bottles, no duffel bags left in corners, no notebooks filled with his expansion ideas. Even the air felt different, lighter, like the apartment had opened its lungs for the first time. Still, the world outside didn't change as quickly. At the grocery store, I bumped into an acquaintance of his, a woman who used to take his weekend fitness classes. She gave me a long, pitying look, the kind people give when they think they know a story. I heard what happened, she whispered, lowering her voice dramatically. It's so sad you two couldn't work it out. Another time, a man from Ethan's gym spotted me at a cafe and muttered, "Some women just don't appreciate ambition," not realizing I could hear him. Each comment pricked sharp, tiny needles, but they didn't sink the way they used to. The shame that once filled my chest like heavy smoke now drifted past me, unable to latch on. I had lived the truth. They had heard a performance. One Saturday morning, Megan and I met for coffee at a small shop with plants hanging from the ceiling like soft green chandeliers. She slid into the booth across from me, wrapping her hands around her mug. "You seem lighter," she said, "not fixed, not healed, but lighter." I let out a breathy laugh. Some days yes, some days not at all. "Well," she took a sip of her latte, "are you afraid to trust again? Because I would be." "I am," I admitted. The honesty felt like unclenching a fist. I keep replaying everything, all the little moments I brushed off. We made a list together, her writing, me remembering. The subtle insults disguised as jokes. The secrecy around money. The guilt whenever he failed at something but somehow made it my burden. The way he called me dramatic whenever I asked fair questions. The way he made his stress my responsibility. Megan looked at the list and sighed. There were so many red flags. "I know," I whispered. "I just didn't want to see them." "Now you do," she said, "and that's what matters." And it was because I was starting to see myself differently. not as the woman whose husband cheated on her wedding night, but as the woman who walked away from being used, the woman who rebuilt, the woman who didn't crumble into silence. A few weeks later, after reviewing my finances, carefully, methodically, I took a small portion of my settlement and some savings and filed paperwork for something that made my hands shake with excitement and fear. My own marketing consulting business. Just a small operation at first. A niche service aimed at women-owned businesses, helping them establish brand identity, communication strategies, digital presence. Every step of it, registering the name, setting up accounts, creating the website, felt like reclaiming something I didn't know I'd lost. My autonomy, my competence, my ability to build, not just support. Seeing my name on the business license felt more powerful than any moment I'd had contributing to Ethan's studio. For the first time, the success or failure of something would be mine alone. No one could hijack it. No one could drain it behind my back. No one could pretend I was just helping. A few nights later, my inbox pinged. It was the blog that had published my anonymized story months earlier. "We'd love to feature a follow-up," the message read. "Not about what happened to you, but about what you built after. Women need endings that aren't defined by men." I stared at the email for a long moment, my fingers pressing lightly against the keyboard, feeling the coolness of the keys. A strange, full warmth filled my chest, not flattery, not pride exactly, but something like recognition. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't broken. I was rebuilding, and people could see it. I wrote back, "I'd be honored, I'm ready." Today I know healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just a quiet room that finally feels like mine. It was just past midnight when I finally closed my laptop, the soft click echoing gently through the quiet of my condo. The same hour, almost to the minute, that I once sat alone in a hotel suite wearing a wedding dress that suddenly felt like a costume for a life I was never meant to live. Tonight, though, I wasn't waiting for anyone to come back. I wasn't listening for footsteps or apologies or explanations. I'd just finished a follow-up piece for the podcast, typed the last sentence, and felt something settle inside me. Not closure exactly, something deeper, something quieter. The apartment around me was still, washed in a soft, bluish glow from the lamp in the corner. The walls looked warmer at night as if they held the day's sunlight in their paint. There was no clutter, no shadows shaped like someone else's belongings, no lingering smell of cologne I once convinced myself meant love. It was just calm, a kind of silence that didn't sting like loneliness. It held me like a safe hand on my back. I leaned against the back of the couch and let the quiet fill my ears. And of course, as midnight always does, it pulled memories up with it. For a moment, I was back in that hotel suite, lace biting into my waist, mascara smudging under my eyes, staring at a door that stayed closed for hours. I could hear it again, the creak of a bed through the wall, the thud of a headboard, a woman's laugh that didn't sound drunk at all, a joke about the bride. I remembered how I shrank inside myself, how embarrassment crawled up my neck until I couldn't breathe. I remembered feeling small enough to fold into the seams of the carpet. God, I thought it was me. I thought I was dramatic, overly sensitive, jealous. I thought loving him meant swallowing the feeling that something was horribly wrong. Now, sitting here with the hum of the fridge in the background and the soft vibration of the building settling for the night, I knew the truth. That drama was instinct. It was my body screaming a warning I ignored because I trusted the wrong people more than I trusted myself. It wasn't madness. It wasn't insecurity. It was survival trying to speak up through the noise of manipulation. I glanced around the room, my condo, still mine, paid for with my work, protected with legal clarity he never expected me to have. My savings weren't drained. My future wasn't tied to his bad decisions. And the studio, whether I kept my share or took the buyout, it no longer felt like a weight. It was leverage I'd earned, not something he'd gifted. But the real victory wasn't financial. It wasn't even exposing him in front of two families or watching the truth peel away his charm and mediation. No, the real revenge was how I rebuilt, how I turned my story into something useful instead of something shameful, how I learned from it rather than letting it cage me. I thought of the women who messaged me after reading the anonymized post. Women who said, "I thought I was crazy too," or "This helped me leave," or "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." Their words became part of the scaffolding holding me up, reminding me that pain isn't a private failure, it's a shared human experience. That telling the truth can be a kind of service, not a confession of weakness. I drew my knees up on the couch and rested my chin on them. Midnight eased into 12:03. The refrigerator clicked softly. Pipes in the walls murmured with warm water. My breathing, steady, slow, filled the space in a way it hadn't in years. It didn't sound strained or shaky or careful. It didn't sound like I was waiting for a door to slam or someone to accuse me of ruining everything again. It sounded free. I closed my eyes. I could still see the girl in the hotel mirror, eyes glossy from humiliation, clutching her bouquet like a life raft, wondering where her husband was on the one night he should have been beside her. I wanted to reach back through time and hold her face in my hands and whisper, "You're not crazy. You're not unlovable. You're not wrong. You're about to become someone stronger." Because that girl, she doesn't live here anymore. I opened my eyes to the gentle glow of my quiet home, and for the first time, the silence felt like a companion, not a warning. Today I know healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's just finally trusting the sound of your own breath in the dark, knowing you'll never ignore it again.